I think there was a clear move within the Parliamentary Labour Party MPs and even within the Cabinet that this was one more embarrassment that the government couldn't put up with.
Hi there, Neil Patterson from the Sky News Daily podcast. Do hope you're well. We've certainly covered a range of topics on the Daily this week, all the way from plans to try and refreeze the Arctic to Rupert Murdoch's succession handing over the reins to his son Lachlan. If you want to find any of those episodes, just click on the card that's just appeared in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Today, though, we're talking about someone whose time in politics has certainly been controversial and who has, once again, found himself in very hot water. This is Peter Mandelson, and until this week, he was the UK's ambassador to the United States. Before that, he'd certainly been a formidable figure in the Labour Party. To give you an idea of how much of a reputation he had, back in the day when I was a young political correspondent here at Sky News, he'd earned the title the Prince of Darkness because of his ruthless relationship with the media. He'd been a Labour councillor by the age of 25, a spin doctor for the party in the 1980s and early 90s, and then he served in the cabinets of both Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Scandal does, however, seem to have followed Mandelson wherever he goes. He was sacked twice from the cabinet for inappropriate links with rich businessmen, and yet still ended up with a peerage. Earlier this year, though, he made another comeback after working during the Conservative years as a lobbyist. Mandelson was chosen by Keir Starmer to become our ambassador in Washington, despite his known past friendship with the disgraced paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Mandelson had previously said he'd wished he'd never met Epstein, getting pretty testy when asked about their friendship. In February, inquiries from the Financial Times on the matter were met with a very blunt reply. Frankly, can you all off? Back in May, our embassy in the United States began refusing to engage with Sky News after our very own James Matthews pressed Lord Mandelson on those links to Epstein.
In June 2009, did you stay at the apartment in Manhattan of Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm not answering any questions about him.
He was in jail at the time for soliciting prostitution from a minor.
And my knowledge of him is something that I regret. I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
Why did you have an association with him? Because he was in jail at the time.
Why did many people meet him? He was a prolific networker, and I wish I'd never met him in the first place.
A combination of material released by the US House Oversight Committee and emails obtained by Bloomberg News show that Mandelson was friends with Epstein for far longer than he'd previously admitted. They include messages of support sent to Epstein after he'd pleaded guilty to soliciting prostitution from a minor in 2008. So the Prince of Darkness has once again found himself out in the political tundra, fired by Sir Keir Starmer. But how did he become so powerful? And what was he like as an operator during his time in the United States? Well, to find out, I sat down with an old chum of ours here at Sky News, our former political editor and my old boss, Adam Boulton. I began asking him when he first encountered Mandelson and what he was like.
I encountered Peter Mandelson, I think, in 1983, when the long march, if you like, to modernise the Labour Party began. Peter Mandelson came in as a very young man. He'd actually been a TV researcher before that, as a press officer and advisor to Neil Kinnock. And he was the man, for example, who brought in the red rose symbol for the Labour Party, of which there was so much comment at the time. The move to change Labour, to modernise it, actually began under Neil Kinnock, and certainly from the early stage that it was true that Peter Mandelson was a key part of that, working very closely at the time with two new young MPs who shared an office called Gordon Brown and Tony Blair.
Tell us then a little bit more about his time in the back room before he became a politician himself. I mean, this was the point at which he became known as a spin doctor, as the Prince of Darkness.
Peter Mandelson came in as a press officer, set about saying if Labour was ever going to get back into power, it at least had to have decent relationships with the Tory press and others, but also took a very aggressive attitude towards journalists, that if they wrote stories that he didn't like, he would come down on them and take it out on, argue it out in public with them. He was the first person known as a spin doctor in British politics, an American phrase. Just to give you one example, in the 1987 general election, when he was working for Neil Kinnock, I was working for a television station, and I got involved along with the presenter Anne Diamond in an altercation with Dennis Healey, in which he punched me in front of a leading gossip columnist, Nigel Dempster. So that was front page news. Now, Peter Mandelson rang me up and told me that I was going to be banned from Labour Party headquarters on the night of the election, which is what I was due to be covering, because, quite rightly, he thought my presence might be seen as a bit of a distraction. And we had a very, as they say, full and frank exchange of views, but he never held it against me subsequently. And indeed, I remember having a conversation with him after that election, saying, "What are you going to do next, Peter?" And he said, rather to my surprise, "I want to become a Labour MP." And I said, "Oh, that's very interesting. You're a Labour councillor at the moment. Are you going to go for a Labour seat?" And he said, "Oh, no. It's far too much of a nest of vipers. I think I'll look for a seat up in the north of England," as indeed he did.
So having had a ringside seat for it, how much of the 1997 victory, historic victory for Labour, was down to Mandelson?
I think it was down to what he created, although by that stage he was an MP, so he wasn't. He was certainly in headquarters and offering advice, but he also had to fight for his own seat. So, and memorably, when he got elected in Hartlepool, a lot of people were saying, here's this southern smoothie. Who does he think he is? And
wasn't there a comment about mushy peas at some point as well?
Well, that was associated with Peter Mandelson. That was actually a story. There's such nice people in the Labour Party. That was a story that Neil Kinnock used to tell about him, which was that allegedly the story was Peter Mandelson went into a chip shop in Merseyside during a by-election and said, "Oh, could I have some fish and chips? And could I have some of that guacamole?" Rush beef. Now, Peter Mandelson has always denied this, and those who've gone into this forensically know actually that it was an American researcher who said that, not Peter Mandelson. But it kind of fitted with the sharp-suited image that the mustachioed Peter Mandelson had at the time. And so it did stick with him. And as I was saying, that's one of the reasons why when he was elected in Hartlepool to be the candidate, he celebrated quite deliberately on camera by downing a pint of bitter in one, just to show he was a man of the people.
The scandals that emerged during his political career did tend to involve money and did tend to involve lots and lots of money.
I think that's absolutely true. And in his private life, I think it's fair to say that while Peter Mandelson was liked by everybody he worked with, as far as I can tell, he was a social climber, and he did enjoy luxury and the company of rich people and what they had to offer. And if you look at what is now the three disasters in his career, each of them had a connection to rich people. The first one was when he took an undeclared interest-free loan of over £300,000 from a wealthy Labour MP, Geoffrey Robinson. And when that became public, he was challenged on what he told the mortgage company on his first property, and he had to resign from government. The second time was connected to his friendship with the Indian Anglo-England billionaire family, the Hindujas. He was accused of acting improperly on their behalf to help them get a passport. his rivalry, if you like, with Alistair Campbell, who was then head of Tony Blair's press, led Campbell to force Peter Mandelson's second resignation. Subsequently, he was exonerated. But again, there was that rich person connection, as there was, of course, now with Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire networker.
And there was this thought at the time, that's it. That's the back of it. We won't be seeing Peter Mandelson again. But I remember the day that it happened, because I was in the office back in 2008 when we heard that Gordon Brown had brought him back into government.
And that was very interesting, because what happened, Peter Mandelson had to resign from the first government over the mortgage. He then fought the election in re-election in 2001 and famously came out with that phrase, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. So he fought back. Then in the second Blair government, he came back into the government, and then this Hinduja affair blew up. He was pushed out because of that, and a lot of people thought that high office was going to be closed to him. But then, after the fall of Tony Blair, he had patched up his friendship with Gordon Brown and was actually quite happy to come and support Gordon Brown as a minister and advisor and negotiator.
But of course, despite his help when it came to the 2010 election, we all know what happened. We ended up with a coalition government and Labour on the opposition benches. What did Peter Mandelson do next?
He was appointed to be the British Commissioner in Brussels, and in fact, he became the Trade Commissioner. And that, I think, was, testament to, what is not less talked about Peter Mandelson, that he is extremely professionally competent and is, generally he's left a good impression behind in every ministry or department he's held. And of course, he stayed in office through transitions in government. And he also, and this I think is quite crucial to him being brought back as ambassador to the UK, he not only was the European Commissioner, he was the European Trade Commissioner and the chief trade negotiator. I mean, he just did have this skill of whoever he's dealing with of building up a kind of personal intimacy.
But then again, when he was in this post over in Europe, we see this fascination with the rich and the well-connected, and some criticism followed that as well.
Yeah, I mean, people use this expression, movers and shakers, and I think Peter Mandelson certainly believed that there are movers and shakers, that there are people who can make a difference and it's worth getting to know. And he was active on that, and there were certainly some people who criticised him for that.
In his role as ambassador, he pitched up and was faced with an awful lot of criticism from those within and without the White House in Washington. But he has been generally accepted to have done a pretty decent job as ambassador, hasn't he?
As he said himself when he was appointed back this February, the job of the government, as Keir Starmer saw it, was to maintain very close relations with the president. Now, this was quite interesting because some in MAGA, before he'd taken up, or once he'd been named, had dismissed him as a socialist and a lefty and not someone that they would likely to do business with. Now, with his charm and his application and the assistance of the staff already in place at Washington in the British Embassy, he got around that pretty quickly. And much more importantly, he managed very rarely to establish a personal relationship with Donald Trump.
In my view, as the Prime Minister has said, just shows what two countries who trust each other, who are confident in each other and are familiar with each other can do, not just for ourselves, but for those, the rest of the world, who need to benefit from a bigger and better international trading system.
Thank you very much. It was beautifully stated. What a beautiful accent, too. I'd like to have that accent. Thank you.
My mother would be proud.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Now, all of that we may find a bit cringy, but that is how Donald Trump works. He works on personal relationships and personal warmth. And there's no doubt at all that he felt that towards Peter Mandelson.
Let's talk very specifically about Jeffrey Epstein and his relationship with Peter Mandelson.
Nobody could have foreseen the row which emerged about the so-called Epstein file and the disclosure to the public of that pretty damning 50th birthday book in which Peter Mandelson had sort of 10 pages of praise. Equally, it was on record that Peter Mandelson had a relationship, a friendship with Epstein, and that was declared when he was appointed and when he was vetted for the post of Washington ambassador. What I think we didn't know was quite how creepily flattering Peter Mandelson was in his communications with Epstein.
Can I throw another observation into the mix? And it is that Downing Street, they threw their support behind Peter Mandelson, despite presumably knowing that there could be more to come, that this situation could become more complicated. And I suppose that says an awful lot about the regard in which Downing Street held Lord Mandelson.
Yeah, I think it does. Yet another Labour leader, and this time Keir Starmer, found Peter Mandelson to be a useful person. It's often said of Peter Mandelson, he's brilliant at advising others and hopeless at advising himself. And he clearly won the confidence of Keir Starmer. Reportedly, he also, crucially, had won the confidence of Morgan McSweeney, Keir Starmer's chief of staff. So that was very strong support at the heart of government. What appears to have happened is that subsequent revelations didn't really expose anything we didn't know about his friendship with Epstein, but they gave more kind of gruesome, uncomfortable detail. And I think there was a clear move within the Parliamentary Labour Party MPs and even within the cabinet that this was, one more embarrassment that the government couldn't put up with.
Is that the last we will see of Peter Mandelson as regards, active involvement in frontline politics?
Well, Peter Mandelson is still a member of the House of Lords, so that to a certain extent is a potential platform. I would have thought that 3 strikes and you're out does apply. I can't see him being appointed to another high-level post as he has been appointed before to Europe and to the cabinet and then to Washington. I can't see that happening. But I do think that Peter Mandelson is absolutely committed to the Labour Party and to public service. I think he will want to try and contribute to public life and political life in any way he can.
Thanks to Adam for speaking to us, and of course, thanks to you for listening. If you want to see more from the Sky News podcast team, just click that playlist over on the right. And if you want to see more from Sky News, simply click the channel button in the middle.